Excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad to see everybody here. This is an exciting part 3 of our series. So our first speaker today is going to be Eleni Bozia, who is an assistant professor of plastics and digital humanities at Florida. We have a lot of Florida folks. 2/3 of our panel today are folks from Florida. And her work, I would encourage you to go check more out. She does all kinds of really exciting work in terms of digital epigraphy, archaeology, bilingualism. But what she's going to be talking to us about, oh, did I not say associate professor? I'm so sorry. I meant to say associate professor. I'm so sorry. Associate professor of plastics. And go Gators indeed. So she's going to be talking to us about the diversity statement. So Eleni, take it away.
Thank you very much, Amy and Suzanne. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today and participate in this event. Let me start sharing my screen and we can get started. Okay, first I would like to say that I wouldn't want this to come out as giving a recipe for how one should write a diversity statement. I know that it's easier when you can share with people 1, 2, 3, and I will try to structure this in a way as 1, 2, 3. But keep also in mind that the diversity statement can be and should be very personal as well. This is why you will not find so many people inclined to share their diversity statements with you, not because they don't want you to share their brilliance or because they are very selfish, but again, because it is very personal, and if you want it to be effective, it has to be personal. The reason why and the way that has led me to working with DEI, if we can frame it and phrase it this way, even if we should phrase it this way, is when I started diversifying and working on the content of my courses. So I started small and slow. Later on, through my interest as to how we can change, and I will use a simple term, diversify our classics courses, I became involved with the Diversity and Inclusion Steering Committee at the college level, the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, on which I served as a member for 2 years. And then for the subsequent 2 years, I was serving as the chair. And for the past 2 years, I have also been serving as the co-chair in the task force to diversify the general education curriculum at the University of Florida. So starting small and then trying to build in practices that could amplify the way we see DEI or DI&J, justice, in a department, in a personal level, in a department level, and then on a university or college level. So with that in mind, how should we start thinking about writing the diversity statement, getting into the mindset? And I will give you some, again, brief, as I said, I try to frame it as 1, 2, 3. In general, as you start thinking about the diversity statement, do not consider it less important than the other 2 statements. Do not think that it doesn't really matter. It's not as important as the research statement or the teaching statement, or perhaps you think that it is important, and it is important, but you feel that it may be more dangerous than the research and teaching statement, in the sense that it feels, and it is, and it should be more political. That's actually, it should be the reason why you should consider it equally as important as the other 2 statements. Additionally, think of a case where a university does not require a diversity statement. That does not mean that you cannot include best practices as to how you can diversify your courses or your research or your service, and embed it within the other 2 statements. And I will explain later how. Consider all that DEI and J, you may find it either as DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion, or diversity, equity, inclusion and justice, what it entails. And again, I'll get into details in the next couple of minutes. Overcome all the inner obstacles that you have and fears, while also keeping it professional. What I mean by that is, whether you're personally involved as a person who belongs in a minority group, or because you actually feel that you are different and being different is good, you should overcome this. If you consider this an obstacle, you should overcome this and be open and be unafraid to talk about this. Also, if you think that you are not a member of any minority group and you are actually someone from a privileged group, from a privileged background, be also open to talk about that. Do not fear, do not think that this should stop you from being an ally yourself. Showcase your commitment, and I will give you examples as to how you can do that. But in general, I would say by showcasing your commitment, avoid cliches, trying to find tangible ways to show that you are committed or that you have been committed. And in general, similarly, as to do not consider it less important than the research and teaching, do your homework the same way that you do before you do your research and teaching statement. Do your homework and get to know the institution and the people before you write. Now, if I were to go by 1 to 3, your context, past and present, should come first. Second, your vision in teaching, research, and service. And third, come up with a customized plan. Step 1, contextualize. First, let's say in your first paragraph, so to speak, try to define DEI. Don't, again, it is a more political statement than the other two. That's why you need to, I don't want to say tread carefully in the sense that you shouldn't spell things out and that you shouldn't call things out for what they are, but you need to be careful in the way you are phrasing things. However, on the other hand, don't be afraid to call things by their name. Talk about race, talk about gender, talk about social class, sexual orientation, religion, talk about everything that DEI includes. And diversity has many faces. You can also be specific and talk about underrepresentation in our own field. You can talk about how it is defined in general and also how you see underrepresentation in our field. State what DEI, diversity and inclusion, what it means to you. Again, avoid cliches. Try to be genuine, to sound genuine. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has feelings about all this. Don't try to copy and paste from a dictionary about what DEI is. Be professional, because there is always a risk when you try to balance being personal and sounding genuine and sincere with being professional. But state what it actually means to you. Explain and emphasize your commitment. What does that mean? Explain why you feel that DEI is important and how you will show it in the position that you hope you're going to get. Whether you have personal reasons for being committed to diversity. As I said before, whether you belong in a minority group, whether you have something personal to bring to the table, or if you don't feel that you can speak from your personal position or that you do not want to, again, this is personal, this is your personal decision and your personal choice, cite statistics, cite studies. No one can argue with numbers. So your commitment can very well and should very well be a balance of the two. Make it personal if you can and if you want to, but also cite research that you have seen, cite numbers, cite statistics. Talk about what, once you have reached this point, if you have done anything so far to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether it was in your classroom, in your research, in your extracurricular professional activities, in your community, you can talk about that. If you haven't done anything so far, then we can get to the second step 2, where you can talk about your vision as to how you can incorporate DEIJ in your classroom and research and service. So you can skip this part if you don't feel that you have done anything up to this point. But up to point 3, anyone can and should talk about this. And as I said before, do your homework when it comes to everything, and know the data, know the statistics, know and talk about the reality. Step 2, DEI&J in teaching, research, and professional life. At this point, whether you have done anything so far or not, you need to move on and talk about what you are going to offer to the university or the college, the department that you wish to join. Describe your vision to incorporate DEI in your teaching, service, and professional life. And then I have research only if it applies to you, and I will explain. Regarding teaching, try to be as specific as possible, again, regardless of whether you have done anything so far or not. When we talk about teaching, people usually focus on course content, and course content is very important. If there is anything that you can change, there is a different way that you can present your content. There is a way that you can present a history course, include different topics, talk about slavery, depending again on what you are teaching. When you are discussing, for example, Greek or Roman civilization, if you can add additional modules on other civilizations, on other histories, on how people were affected by the way that Greek history and Greek civilization and Roman history and Roman civilization evolved. So anything that you can do, if there is anything that you can do to change your course content, depending, of course, again, on your field of expertise. Course can also mean course development. So if you do not feel that you can talk a lot or that you want to say more about courses and course diversification, talk about course development. For example, in several of the positions you are applying to, they ask you for a syllabus for a course or a course that you would like to develop. Be creative there. Diversity does not only need or should not only be limited to the diversity statement. The course that you propose that you can develop for your new department can be a course that will be diversity oriented, and I will talk about other ways that you can diversify your courses. Talk about co-taught courses with other departments. This goes back to doing your homework. If you know what other departments or centers there are, let's say the Department of African American Studies, or if you have a Center for African American Studies, gender studies, and so on and so forth. So you can, as I said, you can incorporate DEI and you can talk about course development in your DEI statement. If there is no DEI statement as such for your application, include all these things in your teaching statement. However, at the same time, you are showing them that you have done your homework, not only when it comes to courses, but when it comes to the whole campus, and you took time to study what other departments and centers there are out there, and you are willing to expand the classics curriculum. Other ways that you can diversify your courses is through the bibliography. What do I mean by that? Have large representation in your bibliography. Do not just stick to what is considered traditional. Do not just stick to the people who are more well-known. If someone is more well-known, it means that this person has been cited more than others. What does that mean? Perhaps that we are in a vicious cycle of citing and using the bibliography of the same people. So be open with your bibliography. Have a larger representation on whom you are asking your students to read. Also, in the bibliography will mirror and be mirrored in the course content as well. And then pedagogical techniques. Talk about the way that perhaps you can have office hours, open office hours through both Zoom and in person to help people, to help students who are parents as well, students who are working, students who are veterans, students who are first generation students and would require more support. So as I said before, diversity can take different phases and has different phases, but also how we can be more inclusive involves very many different ways beyond, including, but beyond the course content. Service, I want to be mindful of the time, service, designing new or participating in established programs for minority students. That could be one way to talk about how you can contribute to your new department. Again, do your homework, make sure that you know what is already in place there. You do not want to seem like you are trying to reinvent the wheel, or that you didn't even look to see that this is actually in place. If something is in place, talk about how you want to be involved and what you can contribute to that. Talk about mentorship. Normally, when we go into a new department, we start from the, let's say, the lowest academic rank, but that does not mean that we cannot serve as mentors or that we cannot co-mentor each other and guide each other through positions, through lecturing positions or tenure track positions. Or if you are applying for an associate professor or a full professor position, talk about how you can mentor junior colleagues. Depending on how big the department is, talk about the possibility of establishing a DI departmental committee. If there is a departmental committee, talk about what you can do and your willingness to work with them. So make it tangible and give concrete evidence about your willingness to participate in all this, to develop new things. In other words, show your commitment. Professional life, if you are involved with the SES or you are on journal editorial boards, conference committees, if you're involved in the McNair Scholars Program, do your research, see what is out there, get involved. I would invite you to start being involved anyway in all these things if you are not already are. This way you are actually going to make an impact on your colleagues and your students and yourself, and then you can talk, you can bring concrete evidence to the table. In your research, if it applies to you, I do not mean to imply that we all need to change the research that we are doing. So only if it applies to you, only if you can go there, then try to see how your research can be more inclusive content-wise. Not content-wise, we can all diversify our research by, again, including more people in our bibliography and enhancing our perspective. My take for step 2, one message would be, do not fake anything. People will know. We may think that a statement is just a statement, it's faceless, but people can tell a lot more than that you can think. And if you have been already on the receiving end, you can be sure that, I'm sure that you already know what I mean. Customize step 3 and know your audience. Customize your plan based on the university, the department, the college you are applying to. Again, much like the research and teaching statement, try to be relevant. First of all, see what is already there and try to contribute to that. But also it's different if you're applying to work at a university in California, and it's very different if you're applying to work at a university in Florida. Do some research on the university's demographics. See what kind of student demographics you are going to need to cater to. And I'm not talking about compromising, I'm just talking about being realistic. We all need to bring DEI into all aspects of our lives, but there are different ways to phrase it and different ways that we can persuade people. So by knowing your audience, you are more likely to succeed. Explore the universities, as I said, and the department's already existing opportunities so that you can, or even the state's existing opportunities, and more importantly, explore the state's status quo. It is, the universities are beacons of freedom and freedom of expression and freedom of speech, and we are supposed to teach, and we should teach our students how to make the best choices. But inevitably, our students, like ourselves, we live in a state, we live in certain communities. So again, without compromising, we need to find a way to communicate with people, and this is by getting to know them better. When you make it to the interview, be prepared to field such questions specific to the state and the institution. I have been serving on such committees, and these questions inevitably come up one way or another. And be realistic, and I will come to that. Additional tips, share your own story. If you have a story, as I said before, if you come from a minority group, don't be afraid to share. Don't be afraid to be personal. If you come from a privileged background, it's always better to come out and say it, and be honest and be genuine, acknowledge that, and then still explain your commitment. As I said, if you talk with numbers and data and statistics, no one can tell you that DEI does not matter. Also, do not make, in general, any false parallels. What I mean by that is it's a very different experience to be a Black academic or to be a member of the LGBTQ+ community than being, let's say, a New Yorker who lives in Florida. I do not want and do not mean to minimize anyone's discomfort or the fact that we all may feel that we are in awkward and uncomfortable situations, and each one of us feels about this differently. But it's also very different when you have lived through express discrimination. So again, be genuine, but try to avoid making these kind of false parallels. Be prepared for objections. They can be, if you make it, and when you make it to the interview, It may be someone who is not interested in DEI, but still is on the search committee. Someone who thinks you are unrealistic, even though they themselves are committed to DEI, they think that none of this could be accomplished in their department or in their university or in their state. Again, do your homework, talk about numbers, and more importantly, the way that I have found to not just work through objections, but to break and destroy these objections is talking to them about success and success rates. The more inclusive you are, the more welcoming you are, the more the number of your students, majors and minors will increase. And numbers talk and money talk both to the department and at the administration level. Talk about the way you can retain more faculty. Talk about the way you can actually improve, enhance, and make your department stronger. So be prepared to address objections by using logic and by using numbers. Be positive, but also be realistic. So positive that things can change, but realistic, again, not compromise, but be realistic and talk about the work that needs to be done and the people and the commitment that they need to show. Be a visionary. We did not get to where we are. It may not be the best position that we could be, but we are better than what we used to be and in a better place. We can talk about these things, to say the least. So we did not get to where we are by not envisioning and by not having a vision. You are entitled to want things to improve. You are entitled to want to try, and you are entitled to hope. And most importantly, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Be genuine, be honest. Thank you.
Yay, thank you so much, Eleni. That was really wonderful. I know most of us never got this kind of guidance or any kind of instruction for diversity statements. So this was so wonderful. I hope everyone appreciates what a gift this was.